When dungeons came out, I made a video about dungeon items you should grind, but with 4.4's introduction, as well as us learning more about dungeons as a whole, many new items are actually much more worth grinding for compared to those items. A quick example could be the Holy Dragon set, because in that video I said that was a good set for healer, but now that we know more info, it is actually not the best set. So let's not waste any time and let's get right into the video. But before the video starts, please consider subscribing to support the channel and to show that you actually enjoy these videos. A subscription is the best way for you to show your support, and I extremely appreciate it. Now, back to the video. So the way this will be structured is that the first part of the video will talk about a few general items that every dungeon player should have, and then I'll be going into specific items per class, and at the bottom left corner it will say what class said item appertains to. So without further ado, let's go into the items. So there are 3 general items that every player should get for dungeons, all of them coming from the dungeon secret chests you can get. These items are the decoy, the trap, and spirit leaps. I'm assuming that the reason for getting spirit leaps is pretty obvious, but for the other items it might be a little bit obscure. The reason the decoy is useful is because it allows you to do the thorn boss fight much easier. The reason it makes it easier is because if you place it in the stands of the boss arena, it will actually distract all the bats. And the bats are present to stop people from camping, and when they're all focused on the decoy, it actually allows you to camp, which makes the boss fight 10 times easier. So the reason that I say the trap is good is mainly theoretical. If you read the description, it says, place an explosive trap that triggers when mobs walk over it, dealing 20,000 to 250,000 damage based on the dungeon floor you are on. Because we do not know what damage it will do on higher floors, we might actually need this because it could be very powerful. Something that I also noticed is that there's barely any traps on the AH, compared to something like Spirit Leaps, which there are a ton of on the AH, with multiple pages full of them. The final reason I'm saying to get this is because some endgame players have actually told me that they're saving these up, so I'd probably trust them and just save it up as well. There's really not that much you can lose by saving them up. Now, onto the class specific items. For mages, almost everybody already knows that the Spirit Scepter is basically the best weapon, but an up and coming weapon that most people don't talk about is the Yeti Sword. The Yeti Sword's ability does massive damage, and now, due to the introduction of Ice Essence, you can actually 5-star it, which makes it even better. Because of the Yeti Sword's insane price tag, I doubt it will ever get nerfed, and since it is actually pretty balanced, you should really get one, because something like the Spirit Scepter could face the same consequences as the Bonzo Staff. For Berserkers, getting the Bloody Reforge is something they should all do. Most Berserkers will usually use Itchy on their talismans, but Bloody is objectively the better Reforge. As you can see here, I have a common Itchy talisman. This provides me +1 strength as well as +3 crit damage. Then, if we put the Beating Heart, we actually get the Bloody Reforge. This gives us +1 strength and +3 crit damage equal to the Itchy, and it also gives us +1% speed and +1% bonus attack speed. Attack speed seems useless, but it really isn't. Think of it as 1.9 plus PvP. You have a delay, but with every bonus in attack speed, this delay becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, and the higher attack speed means the more times you can hit in 1 second. So, getting a very high attack speed can be really good for meleeing. If you want to get your best attack speed setup, the best way to do this is by putting the Bloody Reforge on your common and uncommon talismans, and then reforge the rest of your talismans for damage and switch your epics to strange until you reach your desired attack speed. For healer, most people tend to think that the best setup is the Mender Fedora plus 3 tier 12 perfect pieces, but this is actually not the case. The best set is actually Zombie Soldier set. The Zombie Soldier set gives both a good amount of health and defense, and when you're a healer, having both stats high is very useful. While having a lot of defense is good, it's very useful to have a high amount of health as well, as when you get hit by some type of true damage, it will go and hit your health instead of going through your defense. So having a high health, which is also provided from the Zombie Soldier set, is very good. For archers, something that you should get is the Hurricane Bow along with the Rend enchant. Since they made it so you have to fully charge your bow to crit, the Hurricane Bow has basically become useless and has only been there for early game players. But in dungeons, you actually have to be pretty close quarters when fighting with the bow. So this makes it so it's much easier to hit all 5 shots of your Hurricane Bow. Almost every time, the 5 shots from your Hurricane Bow is usually way better than 1 or 3 shots from a Runon's bow or a Mosquito bow respectively. There's also a very overpowered exploit that can be used with the Rend 5 enchant. Basically what it does is it allows you to do hundreds of thousands of damage to opponents that usually blocks the damage with defense. So if we read the description of the Rend 5 enchant, we can see that it grants your bow a left click ability that rips out the arrows from nearby enemies and deals 25% of your last critical hit for every arrow in the target, with a 2-second cooldown. But why is this OP? The way the method works is by taking your Hurricane Bow, which has to have Rend 5, and then bow spamming whichever boss you want to deal a lot of damage to. Once you've done bow spamming it, you go to a lower level mob with basically no defense and you use something like a Bone Meringue or any other high damaging weapon to deal a lot of damage. You then go and use your ability by left clicking on your bow towards the enemy, and the boss takes a lot of damage. The reason for this is because you put a lot of arrows into the enemy, and then because you dealt a lot of damage with your Bone Meringue to the lower level enemy, it combines these two, which in turn makes you deal a lot of damage. Finally, for tank, a must-have item is the Earth Shard. Before the 4.4 update, the best melee weapon in the game for dungeons was the Adapter Blade, and many tanks use that. But now with the introduction of the Earth Shard, it's way better to use something like the Earth Shard because it has a very high DPS, basically rivaling the Adaptive Blade in basic stats, as well as it has the Seismic Wave cooldown. This means it reduces the cooldown of Seismic Wave, and this makes it just a no-brainer to use if you're a tank. Other than that, that's all I've got for this video, so if you learned something new about your class or learned about a new broken item, please consider subscribing to support the channel. It helps a lot and it shows me that you do appreciate these videos and that I should put more of them out. So that's the end of the video, and goodbye.